This is not a waiver of any kind. It is supplemental and cumulative, not substitutive. It is not intended as humor, entertainment, retaliation, reputational manipulation, repetitive public argument, nor as any modification of the procedural posture established. I noticed a lot I could say things about following my last release. I've actually been working on and already prepared something that is largely, but not entirely complete, but already over 100,000 characters long. But I was seriously contemplating if it even makes sense to pursue finishing that and releasing it first instead of actually seriously pursuing formally filing a lawsuit first. It's really reached the point. Kimmy's behavior is so blatantly, ridiculously unhinged and incoherent and unapologetically inflammatory that it comes off to me as if to be intentionally so egregious, it's unapologetically attempting to provoke a response from me. To the point that, especially considering the multiple other things I'd be including in that release, I feel like I might actually force someone to actually give me some kind of non-trivial public attention. Which isn't something I'm afraid of, but it makes me suspicious. It's not really what I've been working towards all this time. It seems like a setup where I'd be empowering a push for some kind of false narrative that I somehow enjoy dealing with all this drama. I deserve to have to deal with it, and basically as if somehow I'm a sellout or a fraud, or I've had some kind of concealed ulterior motives all along that I'm intentionally being dishonest about. It's not a good feeling to me. In between lengthy periods of time working on it and contemplating on things, I also have kept checking on my energy and what weird things scumbags might be doing to violate my life on a more spiritual level. I came across an energy recently that I could not ignore. I suppose it's likely I'll end up finishing the larger release I was working on and ultimately release it, especially if this release doesn't get me the kind of result I'm hoping for. But for now, this takes priority to me. I consider this deeply personal, but I haven't ever even really had a personal life to begin with, since everyone I've ever known personally seems to be utterly irredeemable subhuman filth that's just been eager to go gossip and trash talk me behind my back and try to ruin my life any chance they got every step of the way, while I've been a good person all along and never gossiped about anyone and never wanted or tried to actually betray anyone in any capacity. So I'm just gonna go off publicly about it because I really have nothing to lose from doing so, and everything to lose from not doing so. Anyone that doesn't like it, I really couldn't care less. They could literally commit suicide or get murdered or lose their mind or end up in prison or anything else bad over it, and I literally couldn't care less. Also, to be clear, this isn't a call to action for violence. I'm saying karma is karma and expressing my perspective with conviction. I don't know exactly what's been happening behind the scenes all this time, and I'm not trying to pretend I do. I'm expressing my deep distress that I want things to change, and what kind of change I want most right now. I'm certainly not trying to protect anyone who's harmed me from negative consequences occurring to them, while I myself am definitely not actually receiving any protection from them, or any benefit from them that would make me want to protect them from negative consequences they might have brought upon themselves for being diabolical. I was considering completing everything I've been working on for the next release and just adding this to the end, but I intentionally decided to separate them and finish and release this promptly. I suppose it's possible that all the other things I could say that I was working on presenting would increase the impact and how seriously what I'm saying about this would be taken, but it's also possible my intentions could be seen as confusing if I mixed them, and it's also possible that I could trigger consequences I consider unfavorable. I don't want to come off lazy or fake as if I'm neglecting that stuff because it's a lot of effort or some fraud wants to somehow claim I owe it to them to stay silent about what they're doing. But I also don't want to empower false narratives being perpetuated by some massive fraud egregiously violating me spiritually who's trying to bank on me being so agitated by their abuse that they can try to control me through the emotional dysregulation they're hoping to torture me into being permanently trapped in through their intentional infliction of emotional distress on me. So I've decided the approach I'm taking is more likely to produce results I consider favorable to me. I really want to focus this release around just the energy I mentioned seeing recently. But first, I'll include a couple things from Kimmy's stream she did following my last release, which are most pertinent to document for purposes of most obviously framing context to demonstrate my dignity and integrity, the coherency of my position, and ensure the opportunity I'm presenting here isn't able to at all reasonably be somehow repurposed or seen as insincere. First, there was this part.
Again, I do not plan anything I'm going to say. I don't script anything. I kind of just turn on my stream and trust that it'll come out. So anyway, I don't want to get into the content yet. What was I going to say before? Oh yeah, okay. Back to struggling with mental health issues. It takes me a lot of effort to like be good. I knew from a young age I was not meant to work in a normal work structure, and I was always really scared because I didn't know what that meant for me. So yeah, just finding streaming and finding Gentle Flame and finding all of you guys along the way. I just can't express how grateful. I already said that word. I'm trying to think of another word, but my mind is drawing a blank. I just can't express how happy I am. I feel really lucky to be able to finally like find like a job career where it does reward how my brain works, because you know, before streaming I kind of felt like I kind of felt out of place in this world, but I guess that's all of us. Well, actually, I think a lot of us feel very out of place, but a lot of people don't. Isn't that crazy? A lot of people genuinely don't feel out of place in this world. They're like that's what I'm learning the more I get out and meet people. A lot of people are like really happy. That is so wild for me to say. Like, a lot of people I meet out are just like living their life. They're just like happy working on their team with their team, and like they have a healthy lifestyle and stuff, and they're just like, you know, doing their thing, like playing pickleball or like, and a lot of people out there are actually very wholesome and happy. And I'm like, damn, maybe being in this industry on Twitch has like skewed my perception a little bit. Because I do think Twitch attracts a lot of people who don't really feel like they have a place. Well, at least when I joined, at least. So anyway, I think it's just really cool to meet people and to create a place. If the world doesn't have a place where you feel seen, then you can create your own place. Isn't that great? We can all create our own place where we feel seen. And that's just really cool. I think the internet's a cool place for that, because the internet lets us connect with so many people from so many different walks of life, and it makes us feel like we're not the only ones experiencing what we're going through. There's literally somebody out there in this world that is experiencing something very similar to you. No matter how niche of a feeling you're experiencing, I'm learning that somebody out there will have experienced it in some way, you know. I recently quit my job and I feel so cooked. I don't know what to do, but I'll figure it out. Dancing emoji. That's the only thing you can do. You just gotta trust that you're going to be okay. You're gonna figure it out. And rejection is redirection. Always remember this. Rejection is redirection. Yes.
Kimmy made multiple statements that stream about the intentionality of her content. She has a very obviously inconsistent position on this, and it increasingly seems to me to be foundational in her efforts to maliciously, completely discredit me entirely to my detriment, entirely against my consent. I've already documented her admitting she's pre-planned and essentially scripted streams for much of her career, so the idea that she never scripts anything is an outright lie. Further, if she trusts that it will come out, that means before she starts her stream, she's already pre-planned in her head certain things she feels the need to say at one point or another, and essentially is looking for an opportunity for it to seem natural for her to start yapping about. So, sure, she probably technically doesn't script exactly word for word every single thing she says on her streams, but that's basically irrelevant when she has a very good idea exactly what topics she wants to cover and why. This demonstrates a pattern of Kimmy intentionally misrepresenting the true extent of her intentionality with her content by attempting to make it seem much more innocent or harmless than it is, simply due to the fact that not every single word she says is meticulously pre-planned, attempting to make any extent of planning seem therefore minimal and inherently benevolent. She's attempting to conflate planning and scripting. You very much can largely plan how you want something to happen without scripting every word, and the end result, in terms of control you have over the situation, can be essentially equivalent. I've seen Kimmy mention many times how she's grateful for support she's gotten, but I've never even once actually felt like she's shown me any real gratitude for any of the genuine care I've put into how I've treated her over the years. But, I mean, she's a massive fraud and loser, so what else should I expect, right? Actual decency or meaningful honesty? Of course not. She's a mess, and I guess she wants to stay that way forever. I know she's severely delusional if she thinks she can be so unhinged and unreasonable and casually have a functional, healthy, lasting relationship with a more normal person she considers wholesome and happy literally ever, even if she wants to keep her dating life completely private. But hey, she clearly is extremely delusional and thinks she's smarter and a better person than me because she can ride the wave of egregious defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress that her subhuman friends and subhuman filth from my past empowered her to try to destroy my life with, combined with political corruption and systemic dysfunction. Oh, and privilege she was born into. I guess she'll really learn the hard way and start to really regret her terrible life choices eventually, after it's far too late. It won't be my problem at that point. She can have all the mental breakdowns she wants, privately or publicly, and I won't have to care in the slightest, nor will I want to. I have absolutely no interest in meeting new people, neither online nor in person. And if she's implying she somehow gave me an opportunity to create a place I feel seen, that's complete garbage. I don't feel seen anywhere, even here. Literally zero results that actually benefit me or that I've actually wanted. It's always just more goddamn stress and more goddamn work to do, with no financial or other gain seeming like any kind of real prospect I should ever see any real hope for. And it's just draining time and energy away from other things I could be doing to make money or improve my life. But I feel like I'm robbed of my soul and lose my dignity and integrity if I don't keep going. I'm actually focused on preserving my dignity and integrity and not behaving like a shallow, degenerate loser. Which means I have to put all my time and energy into that instead of chasing the algorithm or looking for easy ways to try to go viral. I'm not willing to compromise clarity to make friends, so organically getting attention by someone already established giving it to me out of actual desire and intent to support me doesn't seem realistic. I'm already at the point where I feel like I'm going to end up having to give whatever attorney I hire for a lawsuit 100% contingency just so they don't try to force me to tolerate a sloppy discovery that robs me of my soul. The more I speak, the more my intimate prospects with anyone I've actually wanted them with seem to prove never even really existed. Literally all downside and literally no upside, with seemingly no prospect of things ever actually getting better, and only the prospect of even greater suffering and immeasurable regret if I try any kind of compromise. It's extremely agitating and deeply disturbing, much more than it is anything else. And if I ever do manage to make it into something worthwhile, it's definitely not because Kimmy or any of her associates gave me an opportunity to do so. It would actually be against their efforts to constantly sabotage me and destroy my credibility and life as a whole. Kimmy made some strange comment about even really niche experiences being something you can find others who resonate with you on the internet about. No idea what she meant by that. I wouldn't say I resonate with that. I've been feeling like nobody really resonates with me in real life or online, and for the most part, I feel like people really don't understand my perspective or what it's like to have gone through what I've been through at all, or they don't really care at all, or both. And then there's rejection as redirection. I don't know or care about whoever she was responding to specifically there, but I've been getting this feeling like Kimmy has been attempting to present the nightmare reality she's been a direct and major contributor to causing me as somehow being some kind of job for me that I've somehow been getting compensated for, which I've now quit or gotten fired from somehow. If that's how my behavior is being interpreted, then it's so utterly irrational and baseless that it can be twisted so egregiously to where it seems like anything I do is some kind of redirection that Kimmy is somehow doing me a favor, supposedly guiding me to. Which would explain how she's been constantly just making my life miserable and somehow benefiting more while I just end up more depleted and at a detriment. So Kimmy's basically admitting she rejected me to try to force me to redirect my affections towards Celine, only to have Celine try to make an absolute mockery of me even harder and even more aggressively and unapologetically attempt to dead-end my energy and rob me of my soul and make my life increasingly difficult and miserable. Especially with the timing, this really confirms to me that Celine is an utterly non-viable intimate prospect, and she was never really viable to begin with. Not that that's surprising to me. She never seemed to like me at all anyway, so any affection I ever felt towards her always felt utterly hopelessly one-sided. All the more reason it makes sense that I've kept my distance from her and refused to chase her or beg her for attention or validation to any extent. It clearly would just validate all the severe mistreatment Kimmy, Jamie, and others have inflicted on me. This sounds like something a tarot reader or other kind of spiritualist doing some kind of energy reading would say. Like rejection is protection or something. There are different variants. But I've never engaged with Kimmy out of pursuit of some kind of spiritual guide. I gave Kimmy attention in hopes of her being my serious long-term girlfriend and intimate life partner, like I literally explicitly, extremely clearly told her from the beginning. This isn't the first time I've seen Kimmy basically force me to show more affection to Celine, only to then turn around and maliciously act like it means I'm a bad person and a fraud, and basically deserve death because she feels entitled to destroying my life for her own selfish gain, fully knowingly entirely against my consent and entirely to my detriment. The whole thing amounts to extremely egregious malice where these subhuman clowns are attempting to endlessly terrorize and torture me and leave me brutally stuck and suffering in life with my material circumstances eroding, with no real prospects of things ever improving for me no matter what I do, because I won't extremely pathetically, stupidly, desperately beg Celine for a relationship that it's literally impossible for me to ever have with her, which my life is only really ruined if I try to beg her for anyways. And then I guess confronting them with that reality makes them try to spin it into claims that I've lied about how physically attractive Celine is to me, therefore meaning I've lied about how physically attractive Kimmy is to me as basically more or less, at the very least equally if not even more so than Celine, which then spirals into I'm some horrible, predatory, subhuman filth that was somehow enjoying or benefiting from making Kimmy's life difficult because of the feelings I've claimed to have for her all this time. Which is all in reality complete garbage lies and excuses to try to spin Kimmy and Celine's degeneracy onto me, because they want to avoid ever facing any real accountability for how horribly they've both treated me. Look at where giving Kimmy a charitable interpretation of her behavior constantly all these years has gotten me. An entire goddamn decade of my life pouring so much love and attention into trying to make her life better, only to be punished for it and left in life-threatening deprivation, while learning she's coordinated and conspired with Jamie, and pretty much certainly also Celine, and others to paint me as a pedophile and probably also support garbage allegations from subhuman filth from my past, to support life insurance fraud, sending hitmen after me, and other crimes against me. Absolutely none of which I've ever in reality at all consented to or truly benefited from in any capacity. At this point, for there to be any semblance of me dating Celine to be viable, there would have to be some way to convince me that it doesn't somehow give Kimmy, Jamie, or anyone else any real leverage over my life, which is basically impossible as far as I'm able to determine. And then not only that, but Celine would basically have to beg me to even consider talking to her and believing whatever she's saying isn't some setup to get me murdered or ultimately ruin my life in what would have to be her supposedly being enthusiastic about wanting to date me, which is also something I can't imagine ever happening. I have absolutely no real incentive to go chase down Celine and beg her for breadcrumbs of attention. I don't need spiritual guidance from her either, and like I've been saying, I certainly don't owe her anything. I don't feel she loves or respects me at all, and certainly not that she wants to date. If somehow I'm wrong about that, then she should blame Kimmy for constantly making it extremely difficult and basically entirely non-viable for me to feel any amount of comfort embracing Celine's feelings, even if Celine were to show them clearly. Regardless, I'm not going to allow myself to be dragged into that drama with indirect garbage that just tries to make my life even more difficult for literally absolutely zero conceivable real benefit to me, on top of all the garbage I'm already dealing with directly as a result of Kimmy and her multiple serious mental illnesses. I'm literally never going to reach a point. I'm so agitated by Kimmy's disrespect, neglect, excuses, and garbage politics that I randomly decide abandoning all reasoning, dignity, and integrity and just randomly trying to suck up to Celine makes any kind of real sense whatsoever, or isn't at all viable course of action. Especially after I gave Celine a chance already once before to take me seriously as an intimate prospect and reciprocate my feelings adequately, and she chose to make a complete mockery of it instead, and has pretty much certainly just attempted to justify me being abused even more egregiously, literally just because I'm a good person with real integrity. Never again. Absolutely never again. Not with her, not with anyone. Ever. For any reason. And then there was also another part from that stream.
I am starting the process to get my eggs frozen, so that's another thing I've been working on. Right now I'm taking supplements and I have to go get my blood work done, and then I have to start this hormone process where I basically like inject my body with hormones. I'm like, oh my god, this is crazy. So I'm starting that process. I guess I've been catching up on my life stuff a lot these days, I'd say. I had an entire crash out over freezing my eggs because I'm like, it just feels so unfair, man. I'm like, why do I have to pay over $10,000 to freeze my eggs if I want to have a child in the future? Like, why do I have to pay? And that's only if I want to freeze one round of eggs. It's over 10,000 per round, and I'm probably gonna have to do 2 rounds. And I'm like, oh my god. And usually, well, not usually, but if you have a job at like a big company, then they'll actually pay for it. But I don't. So yeah, so I'm figuring that out too. So that's just like that's another thing on my mind for sure these days. Just going through the whole process. And then on top of that, it's an extra like $1,000 a year just for it to be kept. Yeah, so unfortunately, every like streamer, content creator, we all have to pay out of pocket for everything. We have to pay for our own health insurance, dental insurance, car insurance. Well, obviously car insurance, but I just decided to add that. Yeah, I'm just like, I just feel like freezing eggs should be, I don't know, man, I just feel like it should be cheaper. Like, doesn't America, like, don't we want to have more kids? Like, what's going on? Like, don't we want to have kids? I feel like the government should, like, subsidize it at this point. You know what I mean? Like, we don't need all that money going to, like, fund billionaires to, like, kidnap kids, you know? We can, like, help women freeze their eggs instead. How about that? How about that? Sorry, that was a bad reference, but sometimes when I think about things, my mind just gets very upset. Yeah, very upset. just feel like the government wants kids. I feel like the government wants kids. They should prioritize making it easier to have kids. You know? I don't know.
Kimmy was more explicitly political in that stream than I've ever seen her in her entire career. She was also more disingenuous, unreasonable, and incoherent about it than I've ever seen her before. There really are a lot of things I could say about that stream Kimmy did, if I want to dig into what I suppose becomes heavily political commentary. But this is probably the only other thing I feel is especially worth addressing for purposes of making this release as effective as reasonably possible at its intended purpose. Kimmy has no place complaining about billionaires kidnapping kids, while herself being primarily focused on generating revenue and surviving in general, for most of her career off of a platform so corrupt and degenerate as Twitch, which is owned by a billionaire. While she's gotten countless sponsorships over the years from mega corporations owned and/or heavily contributed to by billionaires. While she's knowingly and actively ongoingly involved in civil and criminal conspiracy behavior involving defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, life insurance fraud, and attempted murder, among other things. Trying to destroy someone's life and get them killed to cover up falsely accusing them of being a pedophile and supporting subhuman filth, attempting to falsely accuse and frame them of whatever else, while knowing before she even started trying it that it is not someone she should ever even think of trying such a thing on. She has demonstrated a level of seriously harmful mental illness that even a billionaire kidnapping kids, as mentally ill, degenerate, and reprehensible as that obviously is, does not possess. I have a bigger problem with Kimmy than I do any billionaire. I have no personal issue with any billionaire, and, at least to my knowledge, no billionaire has any personal issue with me. Of course, I question why Elon Musk is okay with criminal impersonation of me on his platform to this day, but I really don't think he's the one running the account, and I don't even really have any evidence he actually knows it exists and is choosing to do nothing about it. And I already know this virtue-signaling extraordinaire Kimmy better not be trying to claim I'm out here trying to kidnap kids or support others in kidnapping kids. Evidence? Oh, right, there is none. Because I'm not, and I never have been. That aside, the government doesn't actually want everyone to simply have more children. I'm pretty sure Kimmy knows this, and she's just acting stupid here. Otherwise, she's clearly quite immature and fails to understand things I'd say are pretty obvious to any reasonable adults. The government wants more workers integrated into their standard structure. Not every child anyone has is necessarily going to be that. If you're someone more influential with the capability to resist that and therefore possibly have children that can resist that, possibly even be born outside of that inherently, the government has no inherent incentive to help you in that. Clearly, Kimmy is not an average citizen, and she even explicitly mentioned how she does not fit into the normal job structure. Her point is basically, why won't the government support her in doing something that doesn't actually inherently benefit it at all? In fact, I would say it actively harms it, since she's clearly been intentionally and extensively, entirely unlawfully violating my basic human rights and wants to be endlessly rewarded for that behavior, and unapologetically flaunting seriously malicious unlawful behavior seriously undermines the law and therefore seriously undermines the government enforcing it. If she's been doing this kind of thing to me, imagine how many other people she's probably doing something similar to who can't really speak up about it. I can't imagine she's only ever tried this kind of thing on me. She was just exceptionally stupid for trying it on me. Considerations of societal structure aside, this directly has serious consequences for my connection with Kimmy. If there was ever any semblance of hope for possibility of me dating Kimmy, that is no longer an option and never again will be. I absolutely cannot ever date someone who, especially after years of publicly tormenting me and clearly being involved in perpetuating serious defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress on me in a coordinated effort of malice towards me, is proceeding to publicly flaunt blatant intimate incompatibility with me. If she wants to freeze her eggs, that means she thinks she might want kids in the future. So she's already thinking about and publicly broadcasting how, if I were ever again willing to even consider dating her, I should already expect, before even the relationship begins, that it is most likely not going to last. Or if it does, it's going to be absolutely miserable with constant fighting, drama, politics, ego battle type garbage, and just generally be something I'd essentially be happier and better off without. In that case, I would rather it never even begins. I don't appreciate and won't tolerate someone who openly, publicly, unapologetically feels entitled to being able to flaunt feeling I deserve to be endlessly disrespected by them, particularly in a manner I repeatedly, consistently, and explicitly express severe emotional distress and displeasure in response to over a very prolonged period of time. I will never tolerate a foundation for a relationship with someone where I should expect to be blatantly abandoning my integrity permanently in order to even possibly be in it for any period of time. That's extremely stupid and short-sighted to do, and even if you want to argue I'm not the smartest there is, I'm definitely not that stupid. Even if her seeing what she said as an insult now prompts her to backtrack and decide not to go through with it anymore, it really doesn't matter. Either way, she's already demonstrated that she doesn't really love or respect me at all. She never really has, and she never really will. She's just been trying to say and do whatever is most advantageous for her politics, and to maintain a sense of undeserved and abusive control over my life in any context where I have any willingness to ever entertain the possibility of dating her at any point in the future. So that firmly ends now. She has decisively decided with that action at this time, entirely regardless of whether or not she decides to take it back or delay it or justify it through any means, that dating her is never again a prospect I will see as at all viable, for any reason under any circumstances. My lack of any desire or willingness to ever have children is absolutely unconditional. It doesn't matter who it would be with, it doesn't matter what age me or they are, it doesn't matter how much money I have or whoever I'm with has. It doesn't matter whether the child would have the capability to resist typical work structure enforced by the government or not. It doesn't matter if my life is more public or private. It doesn't matter if I feel I have peace in my life at all or not. No other factors matter either. I just never want kids. Never, and it's really nothing personal with anyone either. It's just how I've always felt for as long as I can remember, and it's not something I've ever wanted to change or can ever see myself wanting to change. Being able to be happy never having kids is an absolute requirement for me for any serious intimate prospect, and I really don't care at all for unserious intimate prospects. It's not necessarily completely doomed if they've ever wanted kids before, but basically flaunting egregiously disrespecting me, utterly unapologetically by trying to expect me to let you control me through constantly being seriously adversarial with me about it, is definitely not something I'd consider acceptable. I'm not trying to date someone while knowing before the relationship even begins that the person is essentially communicating to me that I should expect it to end. If I'm going to date someone, while there obviously isn't ever going to be any real guarantee it will last, I at least want the prospect of it lasting forever to be a real possibility we can both see and reasonably believe is likely. A critical issue on a foundational reason to date is absolutely unacceptable. Before I start getting into the energy that is the focus of this release, I want to first make sure my rhetoric about it is framed as clearly as I reasonably possibly can frame it. I'm well aware I'm using adversarial or agitated language at times. This is far from a normal circumstance, and any at all reasonable or good faith interpretation should be acknowledging that. Being disrespected extremely egregiously for an extremely lengthy period of time, and having my efforts repurposed entirely to my detriment and entirely against my consent, to serve others' goals I never intended to serve, while my explicitly stated intentions are in effect completely neglected, has had seriously negative consequences in my life that I know I don't deserve. As unbelievable as it might perhaps even understandably seem, the contrast or seeming irrationality of my intense, aggravated, or adversarial expression is not, never has been, and never will be a representation of the presence of me possessing ulterior motives in my efforts. Anyone attempting to reinterpret, in effect misrepresenting the true reason for my efforts, as at all different from my explicitly stated intended goals, desires, and purpose, for any reason, is not doing so at all to my benefit or with my consent. They are increasingly egregiously disrespecting me, entirely to my detriment, entirely against my consent. I want this extremely evident because otherwise I end up with my efforts utterly futile to actually serve any purpose I actually want. My more intense expression is non-consensually repurposed with the expression of agitation as indication I must have ulterior motives. My usage of more gentle or controlled tone is non-consensually repurposed to make it seem like I lack conviction in general. Both are critically damaging to my ability to utilize my rhetoric to effectively achieve anything I actually want it to. Just because someone has disrespected me, that does not necessarily mean I never want them in my life again or they are utterly irredeemable. It probably does in most cases, especially with egregious disrespect. But if I'm explicitly stating I have certain desires and am open to considering if even certain disrespect may have come from a place with potentially good intentions, if that person is able and willing to start actually seriously respecting me and treating me how I'm explicitly saying I'd like them to, no matter how unbelievable that may seem to anyone, I am not saying it with any kind of ulterior motives, nor as any kind of invitation or validation for their disrespect to continue. I'm not saying it because I owe it to anyone or I feel some kind of weird hidden guilt or something. The desires I'm explicitly stating I have are fully authentic and should be taken exactly as they should be reasonably interpreted literally. Anyone claiming otherwise is lying completely, and doing so fully, knowingly, entirely to my detriment, entirely against my consent, and should not be at all believed or rewarded for such behavior for any reason at any point in time to any extent, especially moving forward with me providing even more clarity on these matters. The energy I came across was talking about what my high school crush thinks of me now. It explicitly distinguished it from what they thought about me back in high school, but also mixed that in with confusion if I'm still currently in high school. I obviously am not currently literally in high school. I graduated well over a decade ago. As for some kind of claim I'm metaphorically or spiritually in high school, I don't even know what that really means. This energy doesn't really provide me any clarity on that either. Beyond that, there definitely seems to be at least one completely irredeemable, absolutely subhuman clown, fraud, loser, scumbag, narcissist, psychopath out there who is massively benefiting, entirely at my expense, entirely against my consent, from attempting to make it seem like I've ever been intentionally ambiguous on if I particularly care to see myself as still in high school somehow, or if I've ever somehow benefited from others believing I've ever wanted to cause confusion in that aspect. It may or may not be the source of the energy. It found 2 songs relevant, neither of which I personally find particularly relevant. I haven't even heard either before in my life. My interpretation of that is that the energy has, knowingly entirely to my detriment and entirely against my consent, egregiously manipulated and misrepresented the significance of music in my life, primarily through what seems to me to be Lily's energy, with assistance from what seems to me to be primarily Kimmy's and Celine's energy, in order to attempt to perpetuate and impose itself on me endlessly, fully, knowingly, entirely to my detriment and entirely against my consent. I can only really operate based on the literal truth in relation to interpreting the meaning of high school with this energy, since I don't want to ever at all even try to do some weird metaphorical interpretation of it. By a literal interpretation of any even remotely reasonable or coherent standard, if you consider it at all appropriate to consider anyone other than Chloe Chan-kin, someone you'd call my high school crush, you are extremely severely mentally ill, and literally belong in a mental hospital immediately and permanently, or should be literally physically deceased beyond capacity for resuscitation. With that taken into consideration, I will proceed with interpreting the energy, considering it to be describing and ultimately originating from her. It seems Chloe wants to intentionally cause confusion if she's always seen me, how the energy claims she currently supposedly is now seeing me as, which in reality stands in direct contradiction with how she's treated me, since it makes no sense to me at all for her to have treated me how she has if she thought so highly of me back then. This is a deeply conflicted energy and a conflict that I'm quite certain wouldn't even exist if she actually had seen me how she supposedly does now back when we were in high school. She apparently now sees me as someone who makes things happen in my life, someone with very high control over my life, some kind of leader, stands up for myself. To even question if I was largely in possession of these attributes, even back in high school, is something I find extremely disrespectful and dishonest. I've always stood up for myself. People have just been too cowardly to ever actually confront me in any reasonable manner. They always just wanted to gossip behind my back and exaggerate things, or hide or misconstrue details about things to others in order to make me look problematic and like a bad person when I wasn't really the problem. They'd only ever confront me or share things with me in some weird performative way, and I could just feel it. I've seen how people move to try to get close to me just to look for an opportunity to take advantage of me. So, just like now, even back then, I avoided just blurting things out in situations where I know people are being extremely controlling, petty, looking for drama and causing chaos and problems in my life where nothing really good can ever really come out of it for me, and probably are just absolutely unconditionally, utterly malicious towards me overall. I tried to make things happen for myself even in high school, but I also recognize that trying to force things at the expense of my integrity isn't worth it. I graduated high school with a very heavy feeling in my heart that Chloe extremely deeply resents me because I've never been some petty loser she could manipulate, control, and abuse. Through trying attention-seeking, drama-starting behavior, she forced her way into the friend group I most frequently would hang out with, and she constantly made my life difficult and caused tension and distance in my friendships and life in general. I was a kind of leader even back in high school. I was so widely known that I literally had random people come up to me on several occasions and praise me as the hacker for hacking the school Wi-Fi password and sharing it with people. People would come up to me and want to high-five me, ask to be my friend and hang out or something, or ask to type the password into their laptop or other devices. I literally had multiple teachers at the school come up to me and ask me for the password. I'd share with people because I'm genuinely kind, not because I owed it to anyone or I was scared of taking control of my life or something like that. Chloe apparently now sees me as someone who may be single, but the energy was sure I'm single. So she's been lying that she questions whether or not I'm single, while in reality knowing fully clearly that I'm definitely very much single. Even in high school, I was always single and never dated anyone. Chloe was definitely close enough to people that surrounded me that she would have known for sure that I'm very much single. Sure, there were several females that I'd hang out with or interact with regularly, but I never dated any of them, and I never even really tried to make it seem otherwise to anyone either. She apparently now also thinks I'm kind of the type of person who won't just date anyone. Someone who has higher standards than the average person. Someone who kind of avoids going into something I know isn't going to give me back what I think I deserve. Someone who has very high self-respect. Considers me high value. Excuse me. First of all, I don't appreciate the uncertainty. Second of all, I was literally this way in high school too. I never dated anyone because I won't just date anyone. It wasn't some weird social awkwardness issue or some secret attraction to men or some weird disingenuous political thing. The reality is that I really wanted to date Chloe because I saw her as by far the most physically attractive person in the whole school and the only one I really could see myself wanting to spend my life with. And I didn't want to ever entertain dating someone I didn't find attractive enough that I'd seriously want to spend my life with them. That's why she's literally the only one in the whole school who I asked out in the entire time I was in high school. That's obviously higher standards than the average person who is willing to date many people they probably know from the beginning are not someone they want to be with forever. It's not like there weren't several other women I could have asked out and probably dated if I really wanted to, and my whole reasoning for being willing to distance myself from her despite my attraction to her. That alone itself proves that even back in high school, I avoided going into things I know aren't going to give me back what I think I deserve. Not only will I never date anyone I find physically really mediocre or incompatible with my preferences, I'll also never date anyone who's trying to force me to mess around with undignified, politically oriented positions in order to have any real chance to date them by practically having to force them to through those politics. If they have no real love or respect towards me, it doesn't matter how physically attractive they are or what their political positions are or anything else, which is an especially deep position for me to have towards Chloe because back in high school, and honestly even still to this day, when I'm really being honest with myself, she's the most physically attractive person I could ever fathom existing to my liking. She's not exactly what I'd typically consider ideal, but she's a rare exception I know is once in a lifetime in multiple aspects and even more physically attractive to me than anyone else I've ever seen or can even fathom, even one who would be someone that fits within my typical ideal. Being completely honest, I still feel extremely hurt to this day about how our connection has ended up. In reality, even after all this time, I still find her exceptionally physically attractive, more so than anyone else, especially after seeing how things have unfolded as I've tried to move on from her. With both the women I've seen as my only real intimate prospects turning out to be probably even more psychotic and cruel to me than Chloe, Chloe's the only one it makes any real sense for me to ever even consider dating if I ever date anyone in my life. With how I feel after all I've been through, again, being completely honest, I'm already certain I'd be thinking of her a lot and frequently get really aroused by her, even if I never date her and never see her in person ever again. So much so that putting any energy into even trying to date anyone else ever again just seems completely unappealing and stupid. And that just leaves me extremely sad and angry beyond the capability of words to describe, because the prospect of dating Chloe seems to be absolute zero in reality as well, meaning I really will just die alone and never date anyone. After all, although I fully sincerely wish this energy has truth to it, and I'll miraculously get directly contacted privately by Chloe practically begging to meet up with me and pursue starting to date me shortly after I release this, I've been so disappointed so many times by so many things in my life at this point that I find it extremely difficult to believe this isn't just going to be another massive disappointment where nothing I really want happens, and I'm just stuck with more nightmare garbage in my life instead. But I'm still going to try this one very last time, because I don't want this to haunt me later, and I don't want to live with the regret of knowing I didn't give it my all to the very end. For better or worse, the energy questions if she broke my heart in some way with rejection. So she's obviously very knowingly, explicitly rejected me when I asked her out back in high school in that one-on-one I've talked about before. But she goes around presenting it as if it's questionable, if it was heartbreaking to me. Do I seem like the type of person who asks people out for goddamn fun? She's literally the only person I ever asked to date in all of high school. She definitely knows I didn't do it as a joke or a prank or for some weird brain-rotted political reason. She definitely knows her rejection seriously hurt me. I didn't go crying to people around me about it, but I shouldn't have to. First of all, I've never really felt loved or respected at all by any of them, so I expected they'd all only make things even worse for me and help Chloe try to hurt me and destroy my life with lies even more aggressively if they knew how I'm really suffering inside. Second of all, my overall demeanor definitely made it apparent to her, even if she doesn't admit it. She's been extremely fake and malicious this entire time if she's tried to act to others like she didn't know. And also if she's tried to tell people she knew, but it would be okay in the end, and I wouldn't really be that hurt, or it wouldn't really matter that much. The energy talked about Chloe having words unspoken, that back in high school she knew she couldn't balance me in her life, but always had in the back of her mind she could make it work. What really convinced me the energy feels so necessary to thoroughly address publicly like this is when it mentioned that I've kind of been stuck in a limbo, trapped by not knowing how Chloe thinks of me, that how she thinks of me is very unknown to me. It's not a kind of stuck. I've been tormented by this for well over a decade. I can obviously try to draw conclusions based on my experiences and the evidence I have available as I can interpret it on the surface and based on its effective consequences on my life so far. But the severe lack of any meaningful communication from Chloe while I've had to investigate things entirely on my own all this time and see she's been acting weird and shady with breadcrumbing type behavior, which I didn't even notice most of until years later, by the way, because I wasn't stalking her online activity and her strange connection and relevance to things over time, and how it always seems to be through the feelings I've had towards her that somehow others feel entitled to try to make an absolutely brutal, complete mockery of my existence when I speak honestly about things. Someone with such influence on my life certainly makes me wonder what the hell they're really doing behind my back, behind the scenes all this time, and how they might actually feel that would compel them to do so. Trying to move on from her only made my life feel even more brutally stuck, at least certainly in terms of truly viable intimate partner prospects and then eventually everything else, than it did beforehand. I can't believe that's just a coincidence. But what is this about words unspoken? Couldn't balance me in her life, always had in the back of her mind she could make it work. How exactly is her current behavior trying to make it work? Ignoring me, pretending nothing's wrong as far as I'm able to see at all, leaving me suffering and seemingly just enjoying trying to drive me crazy, and leave me in such brutal deprivation that I somehow act in some way where I'm making some decision validating her extremely toxic attitude without even knowing until after it's too late and my life is permanently harmed beyond capability for recovery. She couldn't balance me in her life, so she decided I deserved to be extremely egregiously disrespected and abused by her, and in such a deviously concealed manner where I look severely mentally ill, claiming she's a serious problem, until she terrorized my life indirectly so much she destroyed balance in my life and stole it to add balance to hers, entirely to my detriment, entirely against my consent, so she can force me into a role she definitely knows I'd never want in her life, in order to have any semblance of real balance in mine ever again? Sure makes sense why she'd have words unspoken to me, if the only words she really has are ones she knows expose her for being an absolutely diabolical, utterly malicious, subhuman psychopath narcissist trying to destroy my life with egregious lies and constantly trying to cause chaos and drama in my life that she in reality has always fully known I don't want or deserve or benefit from in any capacity whatsoever. I really wish I could look at it differently, as like she's feeling shy to confess she's actually liked me secretly all this time and she really wants to date me too and stuff. I really do wish that was true, but I really feel crazy thinking that's even possible. I mean, the way she's treated me, I feel like it only really makes sense to believe she's secretly livid I'm not already physically deceased beyond capacity for resuscitation. She probably wanted and hoped I'd commit suicide or get murdered by now. I guess I'll find out soon enough what the truth is, so I won't worry too much. She really has a serious decision to make, and she's going to have to make it pretty fast. Because even though I'd just seriously stay single forever if she doesn't reach out to me to start dating me in the near future, it's definitely not going to make sense to me to even consider whatever she'd say later as anything other than some utmost malicious criminal harassment if she's not going to reach out to me directly and seriously pursue starting to date me promptly after I release this. The energy was saying Chloe's trying to level the playing field. What the hell is that? She's the one that's caused all the problems and been difficult and weird and disrespectful towards me since the beginning, and she feels entitled to dragging me down for her convenience? This is an extremely viciously aggressively agitating behavior and attitude, and it's heavily concealed in some extremely convoluted and heavily political, devious, deceptive misrepresentation of the reality of what she's doing, how she's really treated me, what impact her behavior really has on my life, and her awareness of all that being much more than she presents to others. Further, the meaning of or elaboration on leveling the playing field that was provided in the energy was that if something ended abruptly or I didn't fully get closure on it, she wants to bring me closure or justice she knows I deserve. So she's actively, utmost maliciously harming my life, utmost maliciously trying to hide it from me to get away with trying to rob me of my soul, and calling that bringing me closure. What goddamn closure? This isn't giving me closure. It's just torturing me and making me completely lose whatever little faith I could muster up having in humanity before she started egregiously violating my life like this. There's no closure to even be had with this. Her body is incomparably arousing and attractive to me, but I utterly despise her personality, with how she's been treating me ever since the beginning of any kind of connection between us. And I only see increasing reason to utterly despise her with every passing day that things continue like they have been all this time, ever since she rejected me back in high school how she did. I don't want closure. I want happiness with her being in my life how I've wished all along she would be, which at this point seems to me like something she'd literally rather end up promptly physically deceased, beyond capacity for resuscitation, or perhaps even miserable in a fate worse than death, than ever agree to. Even though, at least from my perspective, I imagine the kind of life I want with her would be wonderful for her as well. It's just so crazy to me and it doesn't make sense or feel valid at all. She's actually such a diabolical subhuman psychopath narcissist. If she's actually been lying like this behind the scenes all this time, and she'd actually rather face some horrible outcome for herself than just start dating me promptly. Like, words can't describe it adequately. They really can't. And justice? Really? How in the bloody hell is this giving me justice? If anything, she's just bringing more egregious injustice into my life. Unless she's planning to start practically begging in the very near future, in direct communication with me, to promptly meet me in person and start dating me and saying she'll do basically anything it takes to prove to me she loves and respects me and wants to make things work between us and last forever. There's nothing even remotely resembling any path to justice that her behavior, or the behavior of anyone operating in this energy for that matter, is bringing me. Realistically, I guess she wouldn't really need to beg as much as just ask politely, with basically the bare minimum amount of words necessary to arrange an in-person one-on-one meeting between us. And it's not like I wouldn't care to try to prove to her that I actually love and respect her and want to make things work and last forever too, if she's actually going to do that, since I genuinely want her to be happy being with me. But after how cold she's been for so long, even asking politely with the bare minimum words needed is basically her begging profusely, but just having too much ego to admit she probably should be trying at least a little harder to convince me she doesn't plan to meet me just to laugh in my face and reject me again or something. I certainly don't see any evidence to even remotely so much as suggest she's going to suddenly, genuinely, respectfully, enthusiastically, practically beg me to date her for a healthy, lifelong, committed, serious, in-person, intimate relationship in the very near future. I really, truly, sincerely want and wish that would happen, but I also refuse to start hallucinating that there's just some amount of wanting or wishing that is just magically going to make it come true, even when all the evidence is screaming constantly at me that I should give up, and it's just mental illness for me to retain any hope for it ever again. I'm entirely unwilling to wait an arbitrarily lengthy or indefinite amount of time for something I should expect, by any even remotely reasonable standard, to never happen. The energy was saying that I was the person kind of fighting for Chloe. That I kind of always had to be the strong one, the one that was kind of making all the moves to try to make the relationship happen and work and be wonderful. Chloe supposedly wants to change that now. The energy was saying that if she would ever come back to me in the future, the main thing is she wants to take the weight off of me. That the need to be strong won't have to be all on me anymore. So much uncertainty with all the kind ofs, it's really agitating. I wasn't kind of fighting for her, kind of always being the strong one. I wholeheartedly made my best attempt to show interest and affection towards her, in a manner where I wasn't compromising my integrity, and after it failed to result in us starting to date, I wholeheartedly made my best attempt to be strong and move on. It was never a relationship with anyone where I'm voluntarily compromising my integrity to be in it isn't a real relationship to me, and therefore not one I'd ever want, and therefore not something worth fighting for. Just because fighting with integrity looks different than fighting without it, that doesn't mean I was ever uncertain or half-hearted. Beyond that, it certainly seems nice if she's claiming she wants to start putting in effort to actually become a loving, intimate life partner, actually dating me and being sexually intimate with me in person frequently. But what exactly does that mean here? She's hiding everything and refusing to talk, while making my life worse behind the scenes and acting like that's being respectful and giving me closure or justice, while trying to leave the door open for herself to randomly come back in my life later and give me a hard time and criminally harass me, while trying to present that as doing me some kind of favor because of me supposedly not having to be entirely strong anymore. No, absolutely not. That's me having to be even stronger and her being even more weak and cruel. She's literally trying to find an excuse to get to blatantly, unapologetically profit off criminally harassing me endlessly and making my life difficult, entirely at my expense, entirely against my consent, and make me seem like a bad person every step of the way and for the rest of my life, while she's actually being diabolical subhuman filth. The energy said Chloe kind of wants to be very equal and have an open, loving, harmonious conversation. That it's kind of a wish for her. That I'm a wish fulfilled, but she doesn't really know how to approach me because she doesn't have enough confidence in herself to go after me again. First of all, again, I don't appreciate the uncertainty. Is she going to be fair and loving to me or not? Does she wish for an amazing life together like I wish for or not? There's no room for kind of. It's a yes or no. If it's not yes, then it's no. I won't date someone if they expect me to be wholeheartedly loving and fair to them, only to have to expect at best half-heartedness from them in return. Absolutely not. Never. Not even if they're the most physically attractive person I could ever fathom existing, like Chloe is. If she just doesn't want to come off too pushy. I mean, if she actually wants those things, that sounds wonderful to me. I want that too. Seriously. I feel like being with her would be a wish fulfilled for me as well. It really would be. I'm not even uncertain about it. I feel like the kind of person she'd have to be to actually feel like this and go for it without genuine malice towards me. I can't imagine the result not being absolutely heavenly for both of us. I guess it would make sense if, as things were as of my last release, Chloe felt like she can't approach me, especially if all the things this energy is revealing are actually at the root of the reason I've had to deal with so much garbage politics and strange resistance in my life that I felt I shouldn't have ever had to deal with. But I want it abundantly evident that I'm fully consciously and intentionally trying to make this release as potently as possible, providing of clarity and healthy pressure on Chloe to promptly reach out to me directly and seriously pursue dating me. If her intentions are good and she's genuinely trying to be loving and respectful to me, I can't imagine it will come off like the complete opposite to me. It seems like it should be pretty easy for her. She could contact me on any of my official communication methods, tell me she saw this release and she wants to date me too and would like to arrange to meet in person to talk about it, and I'd happily try to figure out a time and place we can both agree on. I can't imagine it would be very difficult. To me, the earlier the better. There's nothing I wouldn't put aside to clear time to meet her in person to have a serious discussion about starting to date. I don't want her to feel insecure or indecisive about it. If she's willing to start showing me serious respect, clearly moving forward, there's a lot of behavior she might have done in the past that might have had a negative impact on my life that I'm willing to be convinced didn't come from a truly malicious place in her heart. But no weird garbage. I need to see serious communication and serious follow-through, without delay. I'm not trying to have some extensive back and forth over the internet. I'm seriously not going to tolerate excuse after excuse to delay things or try to get information out of me, and I'm seriously not going to wait around for something that should be happening very quickly, if it's going to happen ever. This really isn't some weird brain-rotted political thing or some weird ulterior motive thing for me. If I'm going to say anything to her, I'm not trying to waste her time or bait her into making herself look bad or anything like that. I expect the same from her to me. The energy went on to say Chloe sees me as kind of wifey material and very nurturing. That she knows she handled me very carelessly or recklessly in the past. That she wants to fix that but really lacks confidence and doesn't think I'd even be receptive of this because of me having high self-respect and being high value. That she feels like I would feel like it would be a waste of my time talking to her again. While she's definitely been careless and reckless in how she's treated me, I can appreciate if she respects my gender identity and also can recognize I'm nurturing, and she sees that as a quality that makes her want to keep me in her life. But only if she's not wasting my time and she's not trying to take advantage of me and then abandon me at some point later when it's most convenient or beneficial for her. If she intends on endlessly, egregiously disrespecting me like she's been up to this point, then for sure she's completely right in feeling insecure. As she's been so far, it's just a waste of my time, and I would never even consider speaking to her ever again. She's completely irredeemable, absolute subhuman filth I will truly extremely deeply despise for all of eternity, beyond the capability of words to adequately convey for what she's done to me. If she really wants to keep having this kind of attitude towards me, there's literally no fixing this at all, ever. She couldn't fix it no matter what she ever did or how hard she tried. It's just going to get worse and worse for the rest of her life. And I won't feel the slightest bit sorry for her ever, nor should anyone else. If that's not what she wants and deserves, then me being high value and having high self-respect and all that doesn't matter. I'm not incapable of retaining my self-respect and value while being in a healthy, loving relationship with her, if she's actually going to start showing me the love and respect I want and deserve from her. My anger towards her comes from her seeming to have the personality of an utterly irredeemable, diabolical, subhuman degenerate that seems incapable or unwilling to change for the better, not because she's not physically attractive enough to my liking, or because I find it utterly impossible to ever look past how she's treated me in the past. The energy described things as a very big waiting period for me right now with this. That Chloe's apparently been kind of watching me, maybe stalking my socials, but hasn't actually made a move, hasn't actually come forward and done anything, because she doesn't want to waste her time putting her energy into something that's not going to work out. But the thought of not going back for me, never seeing me again, never communicating with me again, it makes her unhappy. She sees this as a waiting period where never talking to me again is making her unhappy. Well, I certainly wouldn't be surprised if she's been watching what I've been releasing here. It makes sense she hasn't contacted me so far. It's pretty disturbing if she's been doing all this lying and positioned herself so I wouldn't even know, but She's secretly behind the scenes telling people she's unhappy not talking to me. Well, I have no idea that's what's happening. Like, just waiting for me to do something that somehow validates her distance towards me so she can start criminally harassing me that she supposedly wanted me in her life all along or something, after it's only detrimental to me to ever hear from her again. As if I was just supposed to goddamn read her mind and know that when literally nothing at all indicates that externally. I can understand not wanting to put energy into something that won't work out, but that seems in direct contradiction with her claims she's been trying to make things work, no? And I'm the one that's always been making the moves and trying to make things work. But she's the one complaining to others about being unhappy about the distance between us, while doing literally nothing to actually solve it. Why the bloody hell is this my problem to even now still be trying to fix? If she's unhappy because she desperately wanted me to make a release like this, pushing her to promptly directly contact me and seriously pursue starting to date me seriously and be very loving and respectful and wonderful to me, then she doesn't have to be unhappy anymore. Without even knowing or even really having any clear indication she wants me to, I've done what she secretly wanted entirely of my own volition. Now she should do the only thing it makes any sense for her to do if she isn't actually utterly irredeemable, absolutely diabolical subhuman filth. If she's unhappy because she always wants an excuse to treat me like the utterly irredeemable, absolutely diabolical subhuman filth she in reality is and always was and always will be, then I don't feel sorry for her one bit. I never will, and neither should anyone else. I remember hearing her basically threaten to kill herself back in high school at one point, when basically complaining about her life or something like that. Nobody should allow her to bully them or pressure them with garbage like that. She's such a goddamn scumbag if she won't show me the love and respect I want and deserve from her, that she could actually commit suicide and nobody should ever feel sorry for her even in the slightest. I'm serious, I certainly wouldn't. If she's really such utterly irredeemable trash that she'd literally rather die than date me, after making my life a living, perpetual, sheer, hellish nightmare for the last over decade, because she's a diabolical liar that wanted to extremely viciously rob me of my soul and leave me utterly miserable for all of eternity, for her own selfish gain, entirely at my expense, entirely against my consent, she deserves it. The energy as a whole, explicitly, was framed as the whole thing is unknown to me. So if I wasn't seriously spiritual and powerfully so, there's basically no real possibility I ever had of ever, even at all, reasonably suspecting this all is happening behind my back, behind the scenes, while literally nobody is communicating clearly or meaningfully or at all directly to me. That extent of heavy concealment definitely cannot be an accident or unintentional. And I find extreme difficulty in imagining that it doesn't mean multiple individuals involved have their own selfish incentives to keep it hidden from me. It was also framed that I seemed to be in the opposite energy to Chloe, like as if we're mirroring each other. So she's been constantly just trying to force out getting knowledge of my position on things so she can just take the opposite somehow to try to constantly control the narrative that's been keeping me stuck and depleting my time and energy and life entirely to my detriment, entirely against my consent, while trying to make me look and feel crazy for calling out that something is wrong and my suspicions have merit, and probably trying to make me look like the one looking for drama by her claiming I'm the one supposedly, knowingly, intentionally switching up or presenting the complete opposite of whatever position she's trying to hold in relation to me for some kind of benefit to myself. It should be pretty obvious that if someone is intentionally trying to keep something completely hidden from me and trying to control my life entirely to my detriment, entirely against my consent behind the scenes, and constantly intentionally, maliciously contradicting my attitude and trying to make up lies to make me look crazy and bad, I'm going to have to adjust to seeing that my behavior continually does not get the kind of outcomes I want and believe I deserve, even without knowing exactly what's going on. That's not me trying to mirror anyone. It's not me looking for drama. It's not me intentionally picking the opposite of what anyone else is doing. Anyone claiming these things is just massively projecting their own garbage attitudes onto me to avoid accountability. The energy claimed there is an energy of potentially dating in the future here, that Chloe would be receptive and welcoming of me. that there's this mirroring energy of we both want death of the past and a new beginning, saying utter financial stability in marriage. Well, I'm not interested in just potential. Are we going to date seriously or not? I don't want some maybe potential in the future, and I'm certainly not interested in ever allowing Chloe back into my life if we're not seriously dating. If she talks to me at all, it better be to seriously pursue seriously dating me and being a wonderful girlfriend to me in person forever. Not somehow metaphorically or exclusively spiritually dating. Not dating with ulterior motives. Not dating for fun short term. Not some kind of exclusively online or somehow long distance thing. A real serious in person intimate relationship. Marriage is typically if you want to have kids, and I never want kids, so I don't see why we should ever do that. I guess if you want to say we'd be spiritually married, that can be a different thing, and I suppose I'm not entirely opposed to that, as long as it doesn't mean she ever finds it appropriate to even try to have kids. As far as legal marriage, I mean, we're both already legally Canadian citizens, and I'd rather not incentivize her to want to leave me to take half of all my money, or incentivize her to make my life difficult because it's a legal hassle to leave her if she's being egregiously disrespectful and maliciously trying to ruin my life, especially considering her history of how she's treated me. So I would never legally marry her. But that's actually because that's the most loving and respectful position that's actually most honoring my integrity of wanting a healthy, lifelong, intimate relationship with her. Financial stability doesn't sound bad, but I really don't like the death of the past and new beginning. Sort of makes it sound like it should be something shameful or something. I'm never going to forget if she's done bad things, and I'm not trying to forget things I've done either. I have nothing to be ashamed of. When I've pursued Kimmy, and to whatever extent I've shown Celine affection, I did it all with pure intentions, and I genuinely was trying to move on from Chloe after she rejected me, and just started making my life even more difficult after learning I wanted to date her. I genuinely do find Kimmy and Celine exceptionally physically attractive, but seeing them being at best no more loving or respectful to me than Chloe, and probably even much worse, well, I was never going to obsess over them just because they have more money or clout or whatever else than Chloe. My preferences for physical attractiveness in a woman is a large part of why I date someone, and Chloe is truly exceptional to me in that aspect. And if she's willing to act decisively and in a timely manner, and actually being good to me, I can see it being very possible that her personality would be wonderfully compatible with mine in a serious, intimate relationship. I can find Kimmy and Celine exceptionally physically attractive, and also find Chloe exceptionally physically attractive too. I understand they have significantly different bodies. It is what it is. I'm not trying to hide it or lie about it. I never was. I've completely sincerely tried to be very loving to all of them and make them feel very special, but in the end, none of them seem to ever have really cared or liked it for truly healthy reasons. In the end, I'm the one that's gotten hurt and been left completely abandoned. I'm not sorry for any of it, and I can't imagine I ever will be. There was a time I'd say Kimmy is more attractive than Chloe. But if Kimmy really cared or liked it for truly healthy reasons, she wouldn't have left me feeling so weird about it. That I've ended up feeling much happier just embracing Chloe as being much more arousing to me than literally anyone else ever possibly could be. And just never again even thinking of trying to fight it at all. The energy claims Chloe has lots of respect for me. I think not. From how she's treated me, the only conclusion I can come to at this point is that she didn't respect me at all in high school, and she doesn't respect me at all now either. Her behavior has been the complete opposite of anything, even remotely resembling respect towards me. The energy says Chloe wants a reset of the energy. A reset? Of an extremely disrespectful and abusive dynamic she's forced me into having to try to deal with entirely to my detriment and entirely against my consent, where she's intentionally keeping her feelings and intentions towards me hidden, and even the fact that she's doing this to me at all hidden from me, while she constantly tries to drive me to suicide or getting murdered or ending up in prison or a mental hospital for life from her defamation and intentionally inflicted emotional distress, attacking me wrongfully. I think not. There will be no resetting of this energy, absolutely not. Utterly unacceptable under any circumstances for any reason whatsoever. That is an extremely egregious, extremely aggressive attempt to completely, unapologetically, utmost viciously, and maliciously, brutally, completely rob me of my soul, fully, knowingly, entirely to my detriment, and entirely against my consent. Even if its success would not result in me ending up physically deceased, it still would certainly result in an extremely miserable, utterly unfulfilling life for me, with absolutely no real prospects of me ever being able to truly escape it or actually meaningfully improve my life. Absolutely not. My position towards dating in general remains and will forever remain consistent. I will never date anyone unless it's with serious intent to last for life. And I don't mean some metaphorical or exclusively spiritual interpretation of dating. It must be physical, in-person dating, with a lot of mutually fully consensual, actual in-person physical sexual intimacy, with a healthy overall dynamic with respect and enthusiasm reciprocated clearly, where my utterly unwavering and absolute lack of desire or willingness to ever have children is completely, thoroughly reciprocated. And it must be with a woman I personally find exceptionally physically attractive. If that whole combination of things is not a real serious prospect, then I don't see dating ever as a real serious prospect. Literally, no matter who it is. That is a matter of principle and of my dignity and integrity and my standards for how I conduct myself and live my life. I will never allow primitive sexual desires to override a highly advanced and sophisticated higher level of awareness that I know makes me powerful at the capacity of being a world leader. I refuse to ever at all voluntarily reward anyone viciously attempting to exploit me endlessly through trying to control me with lust. To wrap things up, I reiterate that what I want most in life right now is to receive direct communication from Chloe Chankin in the very near future, with her seriously pursuing an in-person intimate life partnership with me and trying to arrange to meet me in person one-on-one to discuss proceeding in that direction. I'm saying this extremely clearly, and I fully want and intend for it to be interpreted literally, with absolutely no repurposing or attempts to read into it some kind of concealed or ulterior motives. If Chloe is undesiring or unwilling to do such communication, then I'm thoroughly convinced it's never happening, and nobody else should believe otherwise for any reason either. All the evidence would irrefutably thoroughly prove it's never happening. In that case, she clearly has just been trying to benefit from endlessly trying to leave my life stuck and hoping I will endlessly self-sabotage from feeling heartbroken over how she treated me, and that I'll end up endlessly waiting and hoping for communication from her that will never come, as she constantly tries to defame me behind the scenes until my life is completely destroyed. I'm not wasting my time trying to endlessly clarify or beg and letting her act like I owe her something, or I'm for some reason giving her opportunities to waste my time or make me look bad, or act like it's at all acceptable for her to be even attempting to present any kind of excuses for why she is at all resistant to promptly directly communicating with me clearly about serious desire to promptly meet in person one-on-one for the sole purpose of pursuing a serious, healthy, committed, intimate life partnership in person for life between us. If she refuses to promptly directly communicate properly with me, this is intended as irrefutable evidence she's been literally utmost maliciously trying to keep me brutally stuck in extremely life-threatening deprivation, in desperate hopes I will feel so devastated that I will stupidly, randomly just decide to self-destruct for the benefit of her and others who are all also extremely and utterly maliciously and abusively relentlessly hating on me entirely to my detriment, entirely against my consent, who have all had nothing but the absolute worst of intentions towards me all along. If that's the case, Chloe is trying to get me to destroy myself, begging her for something she knew all along she would literally rather die than ever go through with. Even though she's already long known, my intentions towards her were always healthy and the best possible for both of us. While the reality of her behavior continues to prove she should be the one practically begging me to give her a chance to prove her intentions haven't been absolutely diabolical all this time. If that's really how things are, I have a lawsuit against Kimmy, Jamie, and possibly others, as well as exposing them further publicly, and also other things to improve my life, to worry about. I better never hear from Chloe or anyone else from my past ever again. For any reason. I fully, sincerely, now and forever utterly despise them all, and certainly absolutely none of them should ever expect me to even remotely so much as consider ever reaching out to any of them ever again. And if that's not how things are, I expect to hear from Chloe in the very near future. I'll be watching.